Hi, Susan and Karen.
Oh, how's it going?
I'm trying
Fine,
to turn
thanks.
off that WebEx assistant who keeps talking to us.
It's so obnoxious.
I have to figure out how to get rid of that. It's like I can't live like that. Oh, it's the small things in life. I'm like, it's gonna make me lose it.
It's so annoying.
It's so
Susan,
annoying.
how are you doing?
Oh, Karen, I'm doing pretty well, thank you.
Good,
I'm
good.
yeah, I'm still getting my request for updates on my health from CDC on my COVID-19 vaccination, which is interesting. I just had my 6-week checkup on how I'm doing.
Hmm.
Yeah, it kind of
So you
surprised
had
me.
your vaccination 6 weeks ago?
Yeah, I had my second shot 6 weeks ago. And initially
Nice.
they check in like every day and ask you all these questions, and then it was every week, and maybe this is the last one. I'm not sure. They're collecting data to try to,
Mm.
you know, just check on the safety of the vaccine and make sure there aren't any long-term effects, I guess, that show up later. Well, how are
Wow.
you?
Which
How are
one,
you?
which one did you have? Which shot did you?
Oh,
Oh,
oops,
sorry, everyone.
that's okay. I had the Pfizer
What was that?
vaccine. Oh,
It's
that's
our
it.
WebEx assistant who likes to talk to us. He's really annoying. Hi, Greg and Karen. It's so obnoxious.
That's the same one I got, Susan, and they didn't do any of that follow-up.
Did you do the they gave us at Boulder when I had the shot, they gave me this form and I had to take a screenshot of that QR code,
Uh-huh.
and that activated the account with the CDC, and they began
Oh,
sending me the
it might have been because you were on the early end of it.
maybe where did you get vaccinated?
I got mine at a Vista, and I just finished my 2 week, period after my second shot. Would have been yesterday.
Okay.
So I got it, a month after you. I wonder if they're doing some sort of research for people who got it a little bit earlier.
Well, that could be. Maybe they had a certain number of people they wanted to evaluate, and when they got to that point, they stopped, taking in new people for the survey. I don't know. Interesting. I'm glad though that you're fully vaccinated. It feels good, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Karen and Greg, I did have to mute you. For some reason, there gets weird feedback when too many people are unmuted. So I apologize for abruptly doing that. Deb, Deandra, and May Gerald are the subcommittee members who are a part of community engagement. Deb is actually traveling at the moment, and May wasn't entirely sure she was going to make it. You get myself and Karen instead. We've been a part of every subcommittee meeting, and so we're happy to just kind of jump in and answer any questions you have.
My first question is, why can't we see you guys?
Oh, we didn't have our cameras on. Sorry. Hello there. You can. So sometimes we have to keep our cameras off. I'm going to try to keep mine going, but because of connections and because I'm hosting, it gets all like choppy for me, but we'll give it a shot. So let me pull the document up. So Karen and Greg, Susan had actually sent us a bunch of questions. And so my thought was maybe we'd start with those. And then if you two wanted to chime in with anything that comes to mind, if you don't mind, unless there's something urgent you wanted to start with. Okay. Susan, I'm kicking it over to you.
So should I start with the questions rather than the suggestions? Okay, so.
Well, yeah, either one, or if you want to do the suggestions, either is fine.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll start with the suggestions, I guess. Well, my first suggestion was that in the vision statement that we add, I thought community engagement fosters trust, comma, encourages participation, comma, and informs town decision making. I just thought it might be good to add that because community engagement presumably goes both ways. I mean,
Yeah.
we learn what the
The
government's
only-
doing.
Yeah, the only
Yeah.
thing I want to say about that, Susan, is just to be
Yes.
mindful that this vision statement, these visions in Vision 2030 is not supposed to be pointed at the town. It's supposed to be the whole community.
Uh-huh.
So town facilitates the conversations, and of course, the town's going to and trying to advance the
Mhm.
collective envision,
Uh-huh.
the collective vision, I should say. But I do just want to just make that clear that when we talk about town, it's not just the town government.
Right.
And it's also kind of the greater Netherland area. We don't know what the heck's going on with that.
I gotta get rid of that.
Right.
So
somehow
obnoxious.
some way.
So, well, thank you for explaining. So let me then try to understand.
But
because
you can leave town there. That's fine. I just wanted to make sure, because you mentioned government, that it's
Right.
more than just town government. It's town being the broader town, the nonprofits, the businesses, the residents, the visitors, people who live outside our town,
I
but
see.
spend money there and play there, and you know what I mean. Kids go,
Right.
Yeah.
So community engagement, I interpret it to mean engaging. I interpret it to mean, yeah, government structures engaging the community in a community process. But you're basically saying this doesn't have anything to do with the town of Netherlands engaging with the
The
community.
town, the town's a part of it.
Right.
Just like businesses are a part of it, you're a part of it. Even, you know what I'm
Uh-huh.
saying? It doesn't matter.
Right.
I'm just trying to say that it's about community engagement as how it relates to government is fine, but also how we communicate with each other, how our business is communicating, how are we
Okay.
communicating with the tourist, how are residents communicating with each other, how are nonprofits
Mhm.
communicating with each other, how are the cultural organizations communicating
Mhm.
with each other, what's going on between the schools, what's that communication look like. And again, the town government often plays a big role in a lot of these visions.
Uh-huh.
I just remind people periodically that this is
Yeah.
a vision way beyond the government. The government, again, will play a role. We're facilitating the conversation, but we don't, we're neutral in the sense that
Uh-huh.
we don't have an agenda to somehow advance the town government's policies or whatever.
Right.
We're going to
Well,
facilitate the conversation.
so do you see the language, does this still fit in your mind or not, and informs town decision making? If town is, that's not necessarily the government. it could be advisory boards, it could be nonprofits. I mean, or do you think that that's not appropriate then, that
I
suggestion?
actually think if you use the word community decision making, then that even shows that it's beyond the town limits. But that's just, I'm just giving you my opinion, and
Okay.
it's kind of, I don't want to tell you what you're trying to say.
Well, no, but you're
So-
explaining to me the context of it, which I hadn't understood. So that's fine. That's fine. Then let's see. Now this is sort of more questions, really, questions and suggestions. So I saw the number 2 and 4 as both still having to do with communication. But I may have, if I misunderstood this, then these are probably also going to be a little bit off the mark. But so, for example, the second one says create better communication to improve community town project knowledge, i.e., what is the BOT voting on? What is the DDA working on? What are the hot topics, etc. So initially, I was thinking that this number 4, which talks about providing individuals opportunity to advocate their ideas, and offering a format to gather advice or guidance. And again, I saw this as the town gathering advice or guidance, and ensuring an open, trustworthy, and credible process. They both strike me as having a lot to do with improving communication to me in both directions, letting people know what the board of trustees is voting on and what the topics are. Like right now, a lot of people don't don't even know that our comprehensive plan is coming up for revision, or that the IGA is, and so on. So I understand that's what they mean by what the hot topics are. But in any event, without necessarily, so I first suggested we combine the two, and then I thought perhaps, but again, I'm not sure. Oh, not the first one, but the second, the fourth one. The second, but then I thought, or perhaps one of them has to do with, the first one has to do primarily with informing people about what the town is doing and what the hot topics are. And the second one is more helping people. I mean, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it strikes me the second one, this when they talk about giving individuals opportunity to advocate ideas, offer a format to gather advice or guidance, ensure an open process. That sounds to me more like having a channel for people to get their ideas out in the community, let's say, since you've not necessarily to a town body, but to get their ideas out. So I could see having two, but having that difference between them as opposed to making one on communication. But so one thing I've thought about, and I see that Barbara Hart joined, I really think it would be helpful, like on the BOT votes, not just what they're voting on, but it would be really helpful when there are different opinions, particularly on the Board of Trustees, if we could have something like a page like that, they have in USA Today, you'll see this pro and con on some issue that's a big issue, and you'll have a voice on one side and a voice on the other. And, I don't know if that's something that the town could reserve a space in Mountaineer where they had opinions, as opposed to, I mean, I appreciate the fact that Karen, you write, and Chris Peltier and others in the town write updates on what's happening. But I think for people to understand issues, it would be nice to have some forum other than going to BOT meetings, because we all know a lot of people don't go, a lot of us don't go to them. Some forum where people would have access to the issues and what some opinions are on them from the trustees. So, I was imagining something like a Mountaineer page, a pro and con page that would be for trustees, and then maybe where residents could respond or comment, or maybe have I know there was some discussion about improving the town webpage at the bottom. And I did check out that Boulders as Heard webpage, which I thought it does look like a good idea. But I guess with Barbara, I'd like to know, I mean, does that make sense or not? I know. So here's my thought. The Mountaineer as a newspaper has a certain editorial responsibility to publish things that are, civil discourse. And sometimes when it's just opening stuff up on social media, you get all kinds of wild opinions. But I didn't know if we could start a Mountaineer and then it could be copied onto a web page, or if the town could have a web page for trustees to express opinions on hot topics or votes that are coming up. So anyway,
can I speak to that?
Yes, please.
Because of when the Board of Trustee meetings are and the DDA and other meetings in town are normally on the night of or after we go to print, which means printing things the week after they happen. And unfortunately, the BOT packets and the other packets are not online and figured out 2 weeks ahead of time. So it wouldn't be possible to have something like that. You're kind of, we hit the wrong time with our print deadlines. So we always welcome letters to the editor. Obviously, you've submitted some, but
Yeah.
But as far as having like an opinion piece in the paper, that would be very hard to do for the town and for us because of when we go to print each week.
Well, and
So-
the other thing has to do with quasi judicial matters. A lot of times it's matters that the board can't even be looking at until the packet's posted, which means they've got like a long weekend to form their opinion. So sometimes that timing doesn't work with what you're suggesting either. I have seen though what you're talking about, the Daily Camera will do that about once a week, where they'll have a kind of point counterpoint. So one person writes an editorial with one opinion about something, and then somebody else writes an editorial about the other. Often they're industry leaders or they're civic leaders kind of showing two different viewpoints, which I think
Uh-huh.
can work with some things, you know, as long as it's not protected, you know, like a quasi judicial matter, that they have to follow certain protocol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess right now, because of the immediacy of this, we're doing the 2030. We've got the comprehensive plan coming up. We've got the IGA coming up. I guess I was thinking more in terms, well, I guess I had two trains of thought. One is these big issues, which it would take someone on the board of trustees wanting to do this and think about it, and they've got enough to do anyway, right? Wanting to write an opinion piece. But I was thinking more of someone on the trustees or in the town government making kind of organizing and getting the trustees, if they feel strongly about something big, a big issue, not every item that comes up on the agenda, but you know, right now with the IGA and the comprehensive plan, you know, there's differences coming up in these subcommittees too, with people's thoughts about how we want to develop. And so anyway, I hear what you're saying. I just would like to I'd like to see discussions of the issues that the trustees are dealing with before, you know, when they're big enough that they're thinking about them weeks ahead of the meeting and so on. But I understand that may be a limited thing. And then the other thing I suggested was, you know, I saw that Lafayette, they're a lot bigger than us, but others might. Lafayette, when they were redoing their comprehensive plan, they mailed surveys to everyone inside the town with specific questions, and they laid out three different kind of paths the town could take in terms of development and all these questions. And there might be other towns that do this that are smaller and more similar. But I thought for something, you know, like once a decade or once every 2 decades, when we do the comprehensive plan or the IGA, I thought it might be worth doing a more specific survey and doing mailings to residents and then having it online as well. That was a suggestion. Then I suggested in I see that in the public charrette, in-person public charrette, someone recommended a newcomer packet. And I just wanted to suggest that in that packet, one of the resources that's provided, or that they provide also information on living with wildlife. A lot of people who move up here are moving from suburban and urban areas. So that living with wildlife and then living in the WUI, information on defensible space would be helpful. Now, this one I have a question for both of you, Karen and Miranda.
Before we go
Oh,
any
sorry.
farther, can I just
Yes.
ask Karen and Greg a question?
Yes.
Do you guys know what Susan's referring to when she talks about the IGA? Okay, so let me explain that in just a brief. So there's an intergovernmental agreement, and it has to do with community development, and it's between the Boulder County and the town of Nederland, and it's about to expire. It's going to expire next year in March, and it was a 20-year agreement that basically, long story short, is that no piece of property can annex into the town, even if they meet the state statutory language, which does allow a property owner to annex into a town. Nobody can do that in Nederland without going through a 3-pronged process, which includes the Boulder County commissioners and planning department. So basically, if let's say you were right next door, let's say your land bordered the town, you would first have to apply through our planning commission and through our board of trustees and go through the whole process for them to say, yeah, we think this could work. Then it would go to Boulder County and it would go through their planning department. And then the commissioners would have to agree on it. Then it would come back to the town and then it would go through its final phase of planning commission hearings, board of trustees, and so on to get approval. So this was set up 20 years ago, and part of it was a reaction to a developer who was considering doing a really big development just outside town. You know, from what I understand, it was hundreds of units. And I believe it was in a really pristine environmental area. So the community leaders at that time, I believe Scott Bunchen was the mayor, really worked with the county to come up with an agreement that, hey, you know, we're not going to expand our town borders unless we have a very thorough process that also involves Boulder County. So we have three options as a town. We could just let it lapse. And if that happened, then if somebody wanted to annex, we would follow the statutory process, which means they would still have to have a very public process. They'd have to go through the planning commission, then it would go through the board of trustees. Certain things would trigger it to have to even go to a vote. Second choice would be to take the current language and just extend the agreement. So we'd basically be operating under the exact same agreement we have now, which is anybody who wanted to annex would have to go through this three-pronged process. The third one is what a lot of communities have done, and I'll just call out Lyons as an example, where they worked with Boulder County. They identified areas that both the town and the county agreed on that, hey, these areas make sense for development. So based on the language of the agreement, as long as all those agreements are met, that those parcels don't have to go through the county process. So they're called primary. They're called primary planning areas. So I'm sorry, it's a little complex, and I'm trying to be brief about it, but it really has to do with annexation. And what is the town going to look like in the future? Are we going to expand our borders, or are we not? If we're and if we are, how are we going to do it in a strategic way? And some of the things that impact this decision making is the stress to our infrastructure. You know, what can our water and wastewater utilities handle? You know, use of our roads, our police department, all that kind of stuff. So anyways, that's just a really brief explanation of what Susan's been addressing. Thanks, Susan, for letting me explain that, because then it has more meaning for them.
Yes.
Yes.
No, thank you. I forget that IGA doesn't mean anything to a lot of people. Wait, yeah. So thank you for explaining. That was a very thorough, good description. Thank you, Karen. So the one thing there was an idea that Annette, and I forget her last name, long-term resident, she suggested sometime about a year ago to the board of trustees that we have a organization by neighborhood, so that neighborhoods would come up with the issues that they're dealing with, the problems, and present those, or there would be a kind of, as I understood it, a kind of a channel that would be more manageable, and different neighborhoods have different issues that are important to them. And I remember that Mayor Larson at the time said he was the only trustee without he wasn't a liaison to anything, and he would be the liaison. And then I've never heard anything about it again, but it seemed to me, in terms of community engagement, it seemed to me a good way to promote, again, two-way communication between specific neighborhoods with the board of trustees. So do you know anything about where that stands?
Yeah, I think what happened, Susan, was it was just timing, because that conversation was happening, I believe it was just before the election. So then we ended up losing, I think 4 members, something like that. So we got 4 new members, and the mayor was one of them. But at the same time, we were going heavy into COVID, into the pandemic. So I just think it was timing. And actually, now that you mention it, it was an excellent idea. And the board of trustees that was seated at that time really loved it. And you're right, the mayor said he loved it too. I think it was just with the turnover of the board and then the pandemic, I think it just got left off the table. So maybe it's time to put that back on the table, and maybe that's something that we could add to this, you know, communicating with the neighborhoods, you know, some sort of way for the neighborhoods to communicate with elected officials.
Yeah, no, I think
elected and appointed officials, so that it's clear it could be directly talking to PROSAP or to the DDA or
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and it also would encourage communication within the neighborhoods. So in terms of you're talking about this as a general community effort, it would help it would help the communities communicate within themselves, as well as communicating their concerns to them. So I think it'd be nice to add. Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now
I do just really, sorry, really quick, Susan, I do just want to welcome Nellie and John, who also have jumped in.
Okay.
And yeah. chime in too as we move forward. We're just having a really informal
Thank you.
conversation.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, welcome. So now I'll just give you my questions. And since I think Karen and Miranda, you said these were actually drafted by others. So how much you can answer, I don't know. But the questions I have are really for clarifying. There's some language in here that's kind of abstract, and I thought it would be helpful to have examples, and I don't fully understand. So let's say in the first goal and objective, what is crowdsourcing? What is low-tech crowdsourcing? What is high-tech crowdsourcing? And could I have some examples? And then this idea of creating long-term allies to improve overall town project success and awareness. I thought it's too unclear to me, and maybe it's clear to others, but I thought it would be more helpful to either to make it a little more specific or to give a couple of examples of, or an example of low, whatever. But can you help me understand what those terms mean and what the idea in terms of concrete examples of what would be done under this? What does that include?
So I can give you a couple examples. For instance, the Board of Trustees, the town government working directly with the Downtown Development Authority on a potential parking project that would increase more parking over on Big Springs, kind of where HubNet is in the Black Forest, so that the parking that's on the street is delineated more clearly, space is used more efficiently, the way the water runs off on the road is handled in a more efficient and environmentally correct way. So it's those kinds of partnerships, and then involving the public so that, you know, you're having all these conversations in public meetings so that the community is also engaged and participating in the decision making, you know, through their public comments and that sort of thing. And then also if there's opportunity for vendors to apply or do a RFP or RFQ, you know, the hope is that we're working with local vendors, you know, whether it's for surveying or engineering or it's for you know, concrete work or whatever. So I think that, you know, I'm speaking for people who aren't here, which I always, you know, shudder to do. But Miranda and I were in on all these conversations and heard what they were talking about. But I think really what they were talking about is to leverage those public-private relationships and engage the community so that these kind of high-profile community development projects can be a success and also clearly meet the needs and the desires of the community.
Well, thank you. I think I understand that. Can you give me an example of low-tech crowdsourcing and high-tech crowdsourcing? What is crowdsourcing?
I think they're talking about things like social media and making how you make information available, whether it's through the website or through social media or through community meetings. And I think low tech, it doesn't necessarily involve a device, where high tech might, and then it might be even more technical than that. But Miranda, and again, I was just listening, so I can't say I know 100% what they were intending. But
Yeah,
Miranda,
Karen's pretty right on. And so it's really, you know, utilizing technological resources and not recognizing that everyone's not necessarily always savvy in that. And so it's important to have a blend when doing kind of that outreach. And so using technology on kind of all the platforms available. And then we kind of did that for Envision. You know, it's a Gather Town is relatively kind of that high-tech crowdsourcing where social media may be less so. And I do just want to point out that May has joined us, and May is a part of that subcommittee. Yes. So welcome, May. And
hello, May. So I'm just not, I'm just too old, I guess. So crowdsourcing is just another way of saying getting people's opinions. Is that what it means? Or does it mean outreach?
Yeah, so it's obtaining people's information, like their input and their feedback, typically kind of using the internet or technology to do so.
Okay. Well, thank you. And then So I think I
And I
understand
just want
that.
to say, Susan, my understanding is that it's a two-way street, right? So you want to make sure that you're getting the information to everybody in the way that they are set up to receive the information. And then
Mhm.
we're also giving everyone the opportunity to share their perspective using whatever method they're comfortable for, which is
Mhm.
why, we set this up where you could do in-person charrettes and just share your information sitting at a
Uh-huh.
table with someone, or you could do these kinds of virtual experiences, or as Miranda talked about earlier, there's a real kind of, it's almost like a video game kind of technical way to get engaged.
Oh, yes, thank you. So last question, then I'll stop talking, is point 3, involve town partnerships and engage teams to mobilize resources which serve as catalysts to assist in the success of individual projects. A lot of these are just abstract to me, and so they don't instantly let me think, oh, I could see how we could do that. I don't know. I don't really understand again. What are the resources that serve as catalysts that will assist in the success of projects? I don't know. Maybe I'm just having a hard time understanding, but it seems to me it could be clear for people like me who don't.
May, do you want to address that question?
I'll try. Am I muted or not?
We can hear you.
Okay. Well, that's a great question, Susan. And I think that probably what we're going to try to do is maybe flesh this out a little bit so your input would be appreciated. But I guess catalysts that I can think of would be maybe having an informational night at the library, or setting up a table outside the movies when we start with issues that are before the town. And I think that what we're struggling to do is to make the choices and the relevancy to sort it and through the web page, so that that's one way to access information. But once we do that, I think what we're going to do is we're going to find that we want to have a list of kind of long range discussions. For example, the IGA is coming up. A catalyst might be a copy of the current IGA at the library. And in '94, we had copies also at the co-op and the BNF. That may not be practical today, but maybe at NetHub and at the farmers market, at the community center, wherever people are
I
congregating.
see.
I think that's a
Maybe
lot of
printed
this
in
language.
paper, in the
Excuse
newspaper.
me?
Maybe printed in the newspaper,
Right.
in the
And
Mountaineer.
so an article that Barb might publish about, and I think if we could kind of do, I'm having trouble fitting all the gears together, but I think what we're looking for is kind of a long range, medium range, and short range group of topics. And I think that if we're organized, we could reference it by location and or most of it. So, for example, the AU ordinance affects everybody, whereas say maybe the hot button issues, you can locate them on the map. We're still really in the trying to tailor all this to Netherlands. And
May, I think you're going in and out. May, is that just me, or is that happening for everyone?
No, that's me too. And I'm going to say, Miranda, you can mute me. I can't figure out how to mute myself, and I might.
Me too.
Yeah.
Might
So
help
May,
if
you've been going in and out, just FYI.
okay, let me close some tabs. And I think so I'm gonna walk away for a minute, and if someone else is using extra Wi-Fi, I'm going to ask them to take a pause. I think that's what that is.
Okay, Nellie and John, do you have anything that you wanted to specifically talk about regarding the vision or the goals and objectives?
Just to add on to the Big Springs thing, we live on Barker Road and we noticed the potholes. So that's definitely an issue as far as like the parking, the Ned Hub, because there's certain days when it gets really super busy, you know, and I don't know, I don't know, crosswalks. I don't know if there's that much traffic there, but also another thing that we wanted to address is maybe the school, and my daughter is afraid to walk, and I don't blame her because there's no sidewalks.
And I know that the Arts, Culture, and Education Group, they actually have that as one of their goals, is to create safer, trails and paths and walkways to the schools. They definitely have that. And then the, what's it called, Miranda? Is it the Municipal Government Group, I think, is also addressing the idea of, making a more walkable downtown area. They've talked about, the need to get a better parking situation going, and Big Springs is, and you must have come on when I was talking about that project that the DDA is working with the town on, and also Tebow is participating a little bit in that too, because he owns the Black Forest Inn, and there's some work that needs to be done on his property having to do with the culvert and the water drainage. So that really represents that one of these goals in this community engagement about, the town and different partners, public and private, working together for successful projects, to improve overall town project success and awareness.
Well, Karen, I actually had a question about that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. There's been no change in the internet, but I guess it's been a bad signal. Oh gosh, now I've lost my train of thought. You were just talking about the safety, and I did notice that there was a posting. I didn't get a chance to really read it, Miranda, that you posted on Facebook about upgrades to First Street. And gosh, I know we've been talking about upgrading First Street since the 90s, early 90s, and I couldn't more heartily endorse a more safe avenue there. But I wonder, I know that the vision is not to get too specific, but I know that if a certain development were to go in there along First Street, that some of the work, sidewalks and drainage and, other types of detail would be covered in that. And that would be what I would guess would be the type of partnership.
I think we lost May again.
I've got a couple of comments.
Sure.
Greg and I are here because we went to the Arts Envision meeting, and they said go to the community engagement meeting. Sounds like what you're talking about is community engagement. But I'm not hearing the things I was thinking about talked about here. So here are my ideas. I mean, one of the things I'd like to see is that there should be some kind of definition of community that acknowledges that people who are engaged in the Nederland community don't necessarily live in the town itself. We don't live in the town itself, but we want to be a part of this community. We feel more aligned with Nederland than we do, and want to give our resources to Nederland than we do to, you know, our zip code is Blackhawk, but that's 12 miles down the road. So I'd like to see some kind of wording that acknowledges that it's Nederland and the surrounding area. That's the community that we're talking about. And I'm here because I am interested in, like, I like this idea of a town webpage where you can find out what's going on, but I'd like to see some kind of verbiage that says developing ways to encourage volunteerism. It seems like we've been here for a few years, but it just seems like there's a few I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like there's a few people who are running everything, and it seems like there's a big gene pool here. And how can the community encourage more people to participate and get involved and join discussions and help out and start new ideas? And I think part of that is that it's really difficult to figure out what's happening in Nederland. It's hard to figure out what's happening. So I'd like to see something that says, you know, developing ways to encourage volunteerism. And the whole thing is like trying to build community through these kinds of activities. And so there's a lot of stuff that seems that's on this thing that seems like it's targeted at, you know, what's happening with the town and government. But I think, you know, so my thing is community building through the arts. How can things that are done through the arts build a sense of community and identity in Nederland for not only the people who live in Nederland, but the people who are surrounding. So those are things I'd like to see. Those are my comments.
Those are great comments, and that really does bring it back to what this conversation with Envision 2030 is really all about, which is how do we engage the community more? I'm hearing all this feedback. I'm not sure if it's me or maybe not. But thank you very much, because that is really more focused to what this subcommittee's sort of task is, right? Is to come up with ways to increase community engagement. And your idea of using the arts to do that is just that's delightful. I think it also is impactful that you can tell the community story and engage people in it through the arts. So thank you very much for that. Was there anything particular you were thinking?
I'm so sorry, everyone. I have no idea how to turn this off. But
It's crazy. But do you have anything more that you wanted to flesh out in that regard?
Well, I don't have, I mean, I have lots of specific ideas, but I need to figure out how the system works, you know, like I need that. And that's part of the reason why I'm here. I'm trying to figure out, like, you know, I was hearing things about committees and nonprofits and all kinds of stuff and teams. So it'd be really great if there was a place where you could, like, I love the idea of the welcome package, but there was the place where you could say, I'm new to this area and how can I get involved? And here are the things. And this is when these meetings are scheduled. And here's this committee and contact this person. And maybe there's stuff like that, but I haven't found it. So of course I'm on all the, you know, Facebook groups. But I used to do this in Jamestown. I was the president of their arts board. And so I have tons of ideas about things how we can build community through the arts. I just need to know who to tell them to.
Well, Karen,
I would love to hear from you. Sorry. I would love to hear from you as a DDA member, because we're working on a community arts plan and also for the newspaper, but for the DDA, because that's one of the things that we're working hard on, is to have that plan realized, and we have funding set aside and other things happening. So I would love it if you would attend a DDA meeting, which is also online, and share ideas about art and join their arts committee.
And so what is the GDA? What does that stand for?
Downtown Development Authority, and
Okay.
we kind of represent the businesses. So
Barbara, think I might have your contact information. Do we have your contact information?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I'll send you my email and we can chat.
Perfect.
Yeah. But I also think, I mean,
Karen, this is Karen, this is May. My internet is going in and out, so I wanted to ask you to send your email to me also, because I have an idea too to kind of elaborate on what Barb was saying, how to get these resources mobilized so it's not all on the town. And one idea I had, at least for part of the puzzle, Karen, Garrity, and Miranda, was our sustainability coordinator, since people are our greatest resource, to save time for people that are looking to volunteer or get involved or learn more or put up a hanging of art or something. So that was, I wanted to run that by you and see what you thought.
well, I think Miranda has my email, and I'm happy to let her distribute it. Because I signed up to her.
I'll do that. Thanks.
The other, I mean, this doesn't. So my big idea is that I think we need an arts board. I mean, I think there needs to be a dedicated arts board in Netherlands, but that's not this.
No, I totally agree with you, Karen. I think Karen and Karen, we should get together on that one, because I absolutely agree with you on that.
So Miranda or Karen, could you speak to the idea of the sustainability coordinator also coordinating human resources?
I'm not sure what you mean, because the sustainability coordinator we have, he only works about 10 hours a week, and he's already got a pretty full plate. Just,
But I
I'm not sure. Maybe I missed something in the conversation.
No, I think what you're maybe or talking about, May, is having someone of a like position. And I'll tell you, in a lot of the health and human service outreach sessions, there's a desire to have a board specific to health and human services that would be like SAB or ProSAB, and potentially have that liaison. To Karen's point, that Garrett is grant funded, and so we'd have to find that funding. But I know SAB is also interested in having a coordinator like Garrett. Garrett's been able to do a lot for, that ProSAB has someone like Garrett, because Garrett's been able to do a lot for sustainability. He's been here a year and has launched numerous projects. And so there is benefit in looking at a similar coordinator for other boards and commissions.
Excellent.
I see. That makes good sense. Yeah, and I totally agree with that. Because even ProSAB could really benefit from having a coordinator, because when you got a group of volunteers and, you're trying to write grants and find grants and work on projects, it's great to have a dedicated staff person. And it doesn't have to be a lot of hours. You can get a lot done in 10 hours a week. But how did that align, May, with community engagement? What were you trying? How were you connecting those dots?
I was connecting the dot that Karen from Jamestown made about how it would be nice to, have a central location for information. And Karen and Miranda, as you know, I mean, this comes up over and over and over again. So I've just been wondering, how this can be done, if it's a new position or partial positions. I would like to put forward the idea that we have citizen deputies, perhaps, and this would have to be on a trial basis and see how it works. But for example, in terms of public engagement, a lot of people have issues with crosswalks and so much on CDOT. So do we have a person in town that is the liaison? Is there some citizen in town maybe that already works for CDOT that we could put a feeler out there? And in other instances, if we want to research what kind of frogs we want to put into our wetland is probably already covered, but like the weed eradication, we could have neighborhood captains that, which is the way EcoCycle pickup started in Boulder those many years ago. We had neighborhood captains that were in charge of their neighborhood. So,
What's interesting, May, I just wanted to share with you because I know you missed the very beginning of the meeting for technical difficulty,
yeah,
but
sorry about that.
when Susan Wagner started the conversation, she was talking about this idea that Annette had a year and a half ago, right before the pandemic, which sort of slowed everything down, but about having these kind of neighborhood alliances, where there's people in each neighborhood who then can communicate, whether it's the Board of Trustees or ProSab or wherever, and kind of do the type of thing you're talking about, address whatever needs their neighborhood is having, and form alliances with elected and appointed officials, and maybe also nonprofit organizations or what have you. So it's just interesting to me that we kind of went full circle on that conversation. And it just seems like one of the ideas about engaging, community engagement has to do with reaching out to the neighborhoods. And Nellie talked about that as well, about where she lives, up in Big Springs, and sort of what their needs are regarding, sidewalks and safe way for kids to walk to schools and that sort of thing. So I'm just hearing this as sort of a theme, to connect with the neighborhoods, and maybe it is neighborhood captains or, something along that line. I just think that's a really compelling idea.
Yeah, well, let's write it in as something for us to consider when we get together as a full committee next week. And which net are we talking about, Karen?
Sorry, I was muted and I didn't realize. So it's Annette who runs the clothing closet. I think her last name is Frank. She's got a hyphenated last name, but she runs the clothing closet with the food bank.
Oh, excellent. Okay, yeah, I brought this idea up, every couple years for the last decade. So good to know there's an ally out there, and it's really very effective. It's what got recycling off the ground in Boulder, and it gives weight, like, for example, in my neighborhood, people who would like to see action on the old town garage and maybe even have a little bit of a say in it. So, do you have her email? I had her phone number, but I'm not sure where it is.
I have it, May, and I can share it with you.
Okay,
It's
thanks.
Miranda.
Yeah.
So
I
for,
definitely.
We're leave, so we just want to say bye and thanks for letting us talk, and hopefully we'll meet some people. We'll see your faces someday.
yeah, Karen, it would be great. Karen, let's stay in touch, and especially with the DDA and their art initiative, and some of your other ideas. Stay in touch with us. Stop by town hall and visit Miranda and me.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Susan, there you are. Susan, this is May. I'm sorry I missed the first part of the meeting, but my internet's going in and out, and for some unknown reason. So
I think a lot of us are struggling with that, May. I know if I keep my video on, I get frozen, and we're just having a lot of that kind of problem. I don't know if it's I don't know what it is, to be honest, but. I want to make sure, Nellie and John, if there's anything else that you guys want to talk about in regards to the community engagement vision goals and objectives.
Um, I think my husband was also interested in maybe like starting a basketball league. Because he coached a while back, and I'm assuming that we would go to Teens Inc. for that, right?
Is it for kids to participate?
Yeah, for kids.
Yeah,
For like
I mean,
fourth, fifth, and sixth, and like,
because you might want to
noticed,
try
like-
the schools too.
Okay.
So you've got the elementary school, you've got the middle school, high school, you've got Teens Inc. and Chinook West.
Right.
Let's see, I feel like I'm forgetting somebody. But anyways, yeah, connecting with the schools would be a great idea. As far as community engagement goes, do you think it would be a good idea or a goal to have some sort of way that community members can connect with each other for sort of recreational activities?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then do you have any thoughts on that? Like from maybe a different community you lived in or something you've seen that's worked well for connecting people who have those kinds of, sports and recreations interests?
What our community used to do back in North Dakota was have a type of list of recreational that was usually presented by the school, but in coordination with the rec center. So they would make lists of the available programs that the local community would have to offer, like as far as sports, like over summer months.
Uh-huh.
And kind of like how the Boulder Valley School District right now advertises their school stuff, like their school programs for
Intramural sports.
well, for intramural sports and for the classes that they can take during the summer months and stuff like that. So yeah, I suppose I that would be a good idea to go through,
School.
but then also to bring in the community center too.
Great. That's great feedback.
Yeah, and it was
Yeah.
just basically like a little booklet that they would distribute, like in fall months, in fall and winter, and then they would have summer and spring. So it'd be like an issue that they would put out and distribute through the schools. So
And offer different sports.
yep.
for different
And then there was like
ages.
other times like where you could make Optimist teams. Optimist, I don't know if you guys have that kind of program down here, but
They
it's
go play like different programs similar to that, like down in Boulder. Or
yeah, like it's kind of like
you'd go play little tournaments.
yep, and it's not necessarily AP organized
Or AAU
or AAU organized. So
it's just a bunch of small communities that got together,
and it brought a lot of economic.
and then they'd one community to hold the tournament, another community to hold the tournament, and you'd have teams from different communities, mostly the smaller communities, playing against the bigger communities, which would give a lot more of a
economic boost
economic boost. Yes.
because you'd have your
And-
family staying at motels.
Yeah.
You'd have
Mhm.
your
But that would
people eating in your town because you'd have your gyms set up for these tournaments and they'd have to play at these certain places and stuff like that. So
and be like open 4th, 5th, and 6th.
yeah, so a lot of the little communities would benefit too, you know.
Well, and before COVID, when the casinos were doing so well in Gilpin County, the Gilpin County Rec Center had a very robust program like you're talking about, kind of intramural sports or inter-community sports where, kids would come from Idaho Springs and from Netherland and Gilpin, and they would have these kind of intramural, if I'm using the right word. I
Yep,
don't
yep.
know, but you know what I mean.
Yep.
And it was really recreational, and they did basketball, they did soccer. I'm forgetting something. But anyways, once COVID came, and now they're talking, I think they have opened up that rec center again. It's a really nice big rec center because of course they have the gambling dollars.
Yep.
And Ned used to participate, and I think Ned even used to provide some space, and it might have been through the schools. I know the soccer was played at the elementary school out on their soccer field, and I believe we might have done basketball over at the middle school, high school. But I think you're right. It would be great to get something like that going again. And Gilpin's thinking it's going to take them years to recover back to where they were pre-pandemic for their dollars. So it might be something that it would be a good thing if Ned could kind of instigate it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a great
And
idea.
I mean, up there, most of the coaches were just volunteers from the community.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, and that's kind of how this program worked too when it was happening. But yeah,
Yeah, I
and it's
suppose COVID changed a lot of stuff because we just got here in June and July. I think or August we finished the sale, so we're pretty new.
Yeah,
but
it always takes people like you, people with ideas and people willing to show up and help organize it. So that's a great idea, and it's a great way to have community engagement. And I think that's a piece of it's not just about sharing information about the latest projects going on in town or whatever. It's also just getting together, gathering people together, getting to know each other, getting to know your neighbors, having some fun, and doing healthy activities like that.
Yes, absolutely. That's why we moved here. You have a lot of great stuff to do.
Another activity we had up in North Dakota that was in coordination with the Game and Fish Department up there was they would have little free fishing days, and they'd take kids out and teach them how to fish. Now, I know you can't swim or boat or anything, but you can fish in the lake.
Yep.
Yeah, and we also have the kids' fishing pond, where the little pond is, and then the place in Chipeta Park. And we actually used to do exactly what you're talking about. And I'm trying to remember if we did that last year because of COVID. But we had we involved the Nederland Police Department, and then I'm trying to remember who the other group was that we worked with. Miranda, were you here when we did that the last time with Julie Gustafson and her husband?
That was, I think, 2019, and I wasn't here yet.
Okay. Yeah, we did, but that was the last time because of COVID. So hopefully we can get that going again. I think we usually did it like late summer, before school started, and we would do it out there at the fishing pond. But I love that idea, and I don't know the people who used to kind of organize it. I don't even know if they're around anymore. But then what you're talking about is another way to engage the community and include kids in healthy activities that are recreational in nature, and can be learning experiences, and it's a way for neighbors to get to know each other. So I love the bent of this conversation.
Yep.
And I'd like to also, if we do something like that, get the fish and parks involved, because they're the game wardens and stuff.
Yep, and then they learn the ethical way.
Yeah.
Right, and I think they were the ones. I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's Fish and Wild. I think it's Colorado Fish and Wildlife, maybe.
Yes.
Because
yes.
they actually would stock the pond for us, and then we would have the fishing. Kind of, I forget what we called it. Yeah, but
fishing
they would.
Derby.
Yeah,
fishing derby or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I love that idea.
Cool.
But let's bring it back.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Yes. Cool.
I would like to contribute something.
Sure. Susan,
This is
go.
Susan. Yeah, so I like the idea that Karen from Blackhawk raised about building community. She's thinking in terms of how do we build a sense of community that's broader than just, inside the town boundaries. And she mentioned arts, but I think as we're talking about sports and athletics, that's another way to do it. And I want here to put in a word for our ice hockey community, because as you, Miranda, and Karen probably know, we have rink board.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I know this winter in particular, because of COVID, I mean, we had a lot of kids. We have a league, of course, a youth hockey, Netherlands youth hockey with volunteer coaches. But we've had kids come up from, Boulder, and I think even farther away than Boulder, to play hockey. And this year in particular, because of the outdoors, being able to skate outdoors, there were a lot of kids who came up, and even in years when COVID's not an issue, there's a lot of attraction for people down below to be up in the mountains playing hockey outside. And so I think it's done well, and I like the idea of somehow trying to connect, however you connect them, the people that are involved in sports of various kinds, as a way of, again, building community. I like the sense, I don't know if we can put building community here for community engagement, but activities that, encouraging or promoting community building activities like art and athletics and so on. So that's
Susan, can I ask you a question about that?
Yes.
About the hockey league, because I haven't gone to the practices or anything for a couple of years now. Does that private resident that had their own little hockey? Are they still? Did they sell that, or are they still letting kids use that for free?
Yeah, no. What I heard, and this was a while ago, but what I heard was the husband died, and the widow had not. Last I heard, she hadn't sold the house, and they were allowing the Netherlands youth hockey to continue to skate there. And then what I heard was a resident who went there, an adult, and slipped and fell, sued them. And so she decided, that's what I heard. Again, that's secondhand. I don't know for sure, but in any event, whatever the reason, she stopped allowing them to use the rink. And so they weren't able to, and they had to go back to just outside rink. Yeah,
because that's too bad. That was a sweet little rink there, and she was so nice to let people use it.
Oh, the Grinky, he was wonderful. He was just wonderful. He was so generous, and it was a wonderful thing for our community. And it's really a shame that it went away. Yeah.
I actually find this conversation so refreshing, to be talking about things like arts and sports and recreation and teaching kids how to, interact with their environment in a healthy way through things like fishing, as being community engagement. And not to say that the other stuff isn't important. It's all important, to communicate with the community about what, community improvement projects are happening, or any big initiatives, or, the IGA or whatever. But it's also, I love that this is going back to the point of building community, neighbors getting to know each other, and then neighborhoods advocating for themselves, collectively to elected and appointed officials. It's just bringing this whole different perspective to the conversation. And I just find it so refreshing, and I'm just really grateful that we're having this.
Yes, I agree. I think these are issues we can all come together on.
And I think Netherlands been like kind of a tribal town in a certain way, where this has traditionally happened on a large scale and a small scale. But, the powwow is another way to engage a larger community and to embrace diversity. And so I think
I'm Nellie. I'm sorry. That really encourages me, because
Nellie,
I'm for
Nellie,
MHA. So.
Nellie, I keep meaning to want to introduce you to May. Have you guys met before?
No.
May, Nellie, because you're both have a very similar interest and passion about recognizing and honoring the Indigenous people And so I think it's really important that you two get to know each other better and follow up with each other. May is someone who's really advocated to bring the powwow back, which is a celebration, an event that used to take place here. May, when was the last time there was a powwow up here?
Oh, I think it was the earlier mid 90s.
Yeah, so it's been a long time, but that's also about communicate, community engagement and honoring, you know, the ancestry and the ancestors of the area, and that's another beautiful way to get to know your neighbors, to build understanding, for to engage the community, and you can always kind of cross pollinate. You know, you can have these kinds of events, whether it's sports, arts, culture, whatever, and then also share information about important things that are going on around town, or, you know, hey, this is going to be on the ballot in November, you know, if you want to learn more, you know, blah blah blah. You can have that kind of cross pollination, and in some ways it's almost, I think, more effective, you know, to do it in a way that you're engaging people actively in learning experiences and explorative and creative experiences while you're, you know, exchanging ideas and information.
What I like
Totally.
too is to involve the economically disadvantaged, because I came from, I used to be very poor, and we used to, there was a time when we were homeless too. So there's programs too that we'd like to try to, I don't know what's all established. I know that I found the food bank. I have found the closet.
Close closet.
Well,
Yeah, the
Nellie,
The clothing closet.
Yep.
Nellie, this is May here. I'm actually very interested in that topic myself, and I'm on the housing committee.
Awesome.
And so I'd like to chat with you maybe tomorrow sometime, and if we could find a time, because we're getting some good comments coming in, and I don't know whether it's too late for the deadline, but it would be nice to hear your comments, because I think it's really lacking in our housing vision, and we've been working on kind of a reorganization of that, and we really are. And that brings me to a question for Miranda and Karen. And I hope that this is something that can be put out maybe to the committee before the next meeting, but for us discussion or vote. But I think, Karen Garrity, I totally relate to your enthusiasm about this meeting and many of the other meetings we've been on together. And, you know, what's really going to set us apart is the uniqueness of our vision. And everybody so much talks about the diversity of our people, and that's what makes a town interesting. So here's what I'm thinking. Maybe what we should do is have a catalyst event. And I'm thinking something like, you know, during a farmer's market or something else, Memorial Day maybe, um, get out to the places where people are congregating, not only with our draft goals and objectives, but items to be determined by the committee, I guess, for people to vote on. We can have that scan code in there, Miranda, that Deb did. And because I am having such a hard time with this Envision process, and at times feel so defeated by it, you know, I think that we should move it along a little bit so that we have an idea of where do people stand on certain things. You know, do they want to have straw bale houses or foam creek, or do we want to have these incredibly compact little units where you can like sleep one person and address transitory housing? can people live in RVs? Because when you do the whole carbon footprint thing, for some people, it's just easier at the time. These are questions that, you know, the board may say, oh, we like this, we don't like that. And the great feedback that we've had so far, I mean, I think I could count it in the 4 committees I've been in on my fingers and toes. So I think what I'm thinking about is that we should have the first board meeting that's already been suggested, give it a run through, see where they stand, see where there's confusion or lack of resolve. You know, like somebody might say, oh, straw bales is too specific, or somebody might say, let's put it on the table. What do we think about Ron's development? I don't know. The sustainability thing, should we, you know, do this and that? Just get some input, because I think part of building community is that informal exchange that Netherlands always been so great about. And I mean, if we do go back over the surveys, we'll find that a lot of people feel like there's that disconnect. So if we're serious about this public engagement process, maybe we should put it to use between the first reading, and how call the first reading of this by the BOT a work session maybe, and then determine what questions we're going to ask, or get that set into place, how we can do that, and how we want to tabulate the data. But I was at the farmer's market and one time and had a long talk with Jonathan Baumhover and Jill Dreves about, you know, how the park was going to look, what the wild bear thing was going to look like. And it's just, when you can put these discussions in a happy setting and have somebody there to talk, and, you know, I think you do start to get that engagement.
Right. So May, what I'm thinking is that this is a great conversation to first of all have with your subcommittee members and see if you can get buy-in, and then take it to the larger group, you know, of when all the committees, their representatives are in place to talk about, you know, about your idea and see what people think.
Well, I think that that might be a good idea, but judging from our last meeting where we had so much to go through, I'm wondering if it wouldn't, assuming that there's buy-in from the other committee members and we can craft something that's understandable and makes sense to us, if then we could send it out to the committee members via email and maybe the board, and see if we have any interest in getting more public buy-in and building community trust through the public engagement process. So
Well,
that
and that seems like a good role for the community engagement subcommittee, which you and I think Deb, and is anyone else on this, or did they fall away?
No, but maybe Nellie and Karen, who have been, you know,
Mhm.
I could ask Deb if she wants to, because we're really shorthanded. And, you know, for me, it's a squeaky wheel that needs the greasing, and it hasn't been this one. And so we could definitely use some more help, because we have a long way to go, I think, before we finalize exactly what we're going to put before the board. And I think it would help to get an idea of where the board stands before, because Miranda, I got your email that instead of going on to the goals phase, that this process may end with this vote by the board. And I feel like it's kind of uneven what's going on, that some of the committees like sustainability are, you know, they're A to Z, whereas other committees like economic development and yes, even housing, there's so much left undone, unsaid. I just don't know if it's going to be a workable document, especially with the speeded up timetable and the elimination of part 2, if that's going to happen. I think we need to regroup here. That's my thinking. Susan, you're also invited to be on our public engagement team if you like. I mean,
Oh,
as far as I'm concerned, the more the merrier of this
thank you.
group. But I wouldn't expect it. I know you're involved in so many other groups, but Nellie and Karen, you know, I love the stuff that's being brought up, and I think it all works together. You know, if we can coordinate, like you were saying, Karen, cross pollinate, you know, sporting events into school. There's a lot of ways to kind of announce a town event, put up, you know, a few flyers and stick it onto some farmers market things or whenever it should occur.
Well, and you know, what's interesting is we did an in-person charrette and we were having a snowstorm the other night and we still had a really good turnout. I agree. I think some people really just want to come in person and want to sit down and have a conversation with people. That's why, you know, that's why it's one of the options that we created in this process, so that, you know, some people are really comfortable doing it virtually. Some are fine just doing it on their own. They don't even have to interact with the group. And other people really like to see people in person and have that conversation, that two-way conversation.
Well, and it's a way that you can go to an event or you know, the farmer's market with your friend or spouse, with your kids or grandkids, and you know, one person takes them off and you look through the plans and then you switch off, and so it's a social family outing that you can share with your loved ones on that precious time that you have, that nobody has enough of.
Well, it sounds like this will be a great topic when you guys have your community engagement meeting. Sounds like Nellie and Susan and Karen, because you guys are so small with just you and Deb, Miranda, I don't see a problem with them adding a few people. Do you see any issues with that?
No, we've had other subcommittees do that as well. So
Yeah.
if you are interested, you don't have to, we can put you on the spot, or you can just shoot me an email and let me know, and I'll send you the links to the.
I'm okay.
Okay, cool, Nellie, thanks. I'll start sending you kind of access to the documents and links, and if we can schedule time next week, if you want kind of a tutorial of what's where, just let me know after I send you everything.
Yeah, that would be good.
Cool.
That would be good.
I
And then my
volunteer.
husband's going to be on too, well, with
Okay.
me,
Wonderful.
because we work together.
Love it. Love it.
We had a business for like 10, 12 years. So
That's great.
Love it. Love it.
we're a team.
Susan, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was gonna say I might also volunteer. I need to think it over and maybe talk to
Okay.
May and see what's involved. Get a better idea before I commit to what's involved.
Sure. Sure.
Thanks. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, I've really enjoyed tonight's conversation very, very much. And I feel like we kind of expanded beyond sort of the parameters of where the conversation had been. And that's nothing against the start of the conversation, right? You plant seeds and then you pray for rain and you just see what grows. And having more people here playing with us in the garden, I think has just made it an even richer conversation. So thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's all be in touch, and I'll shoot Deb an email so she knows, or I'm sure Miranda, you'll be doing that too. If you can hear me.
We're
Sorry,
having.
I was muted. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll send an email just connecting everyone. And then Susan, I might just leave you off, and then you can let me know later how you feel.
Okay. Thank you. Or you can put me as a CC if you
Okay,
want. I mean,
yeah,
whichever.
sure. I didn't want to inundate you. I'd be happy to. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Miranda.
All right, everybody. You got 5 minutes back in your day if you'd like.
I've got one more suggestion.
Sure.
Just, I'm sorry, but you know, they were talking about like being able to display like community events and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
What would the cost of a marquee? Like, you know, like those ones that they have like that read across?
Nellie, that's such a great question, because I know that the community center was talking about replacing theirs. I do think it ended up being kind of pricey, so I think they might just be rehabbing their other one. They are kind of pricey. But that being said, you know, I think it's a great idea, and it might be one of those things that we could even get a grant from like the Boulder County Community Foundation or something. I'm just
Cool.
throwing that out there. But there's also a couple local not foundations in town as well that might be willing to help, or it might
Yeah.
even be something
You
that
could like
we could talk to the
put like
DDA
sponsors
about
on
it.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
and
lots
maybe,
of ideas.
you know, maybe the Downtown Development Authority might be interested in it, you know? Because they do have some funding, and, you know, if it's about promoting activities in town, that might be something. But I bet you there's some way that if there was enough momentum behind it, that we might be able to find, Miranda, I'm struggling to remember the gentleman's name. He has the foundation in town. I can't even remember his name. I feel so bad.
David Shortridge.
Shortridge, right. The Shortridge Family Foundation, and then I think it's called the Peak to Peak Healthy Communities Foundation. And there's a couple other ones that are real local that might be willing to, you know, support an effort like that.
Maybe even local businesses.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I wouldn't count on
And
that.
then, I mean, just to
Well,
have like a
local
sponsorship. You
Well,
know?
and local businesses might say, hey, go to the DDA because we pay taxes towards them.
Oh no.
Because
Well,
that's,
we need to get them excited
yeah.
to like,
Well,
you
and
know.
Barb Hart, who was on earlier, she had to go off. She's the,
Mhm.
you know, the editor for or publisher for the newspaper, but she is
Yeah.
also on the DDA board. She's on the Downtown Development Authority board. And she's the one who said to Karen, hey, you know, connect with me because we're trying to do a public art plan. So there's a lot of synergy amongst the people who've been at this meeting.
It sounds like it.
Yeah. Well, I'm
Yeah.
excited. I'm excited for the next conversation.
Great. Me too.
Same here. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm gonna sign out before my computer shuts off.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Yes.
Thanks for
everyone.
hosting.
Thank you.
Thanks for hosting, Miranda, and taking notes.
Yep.
For real.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
Good
Bye.
night.
Night.